Hey everybody, it's John Kraska with EveryLibrary and the EveryLibrary Institute. It is Audiobook Week 2025. We're rounding out a fantastic week of conversations and programming with authors who've written books that have been turned into audiobooks, with folks who narrate audiobooks, with producers in the audiobook space as well. I've learned a lot. It's a genre that I'm not as heavily into as my wife, who not only has the pile of books next to her bedside, which is going to fall over and kill us one night. Every time I get in the car, something else starts, and it's always on double speed. It's amazing to me how fast she listens to audiobooks, but how much of an important element of her reading it is to have that audio conversation as well. So we've been doing great programming all week in order to connect listeners and readers with new titles and with potentially some new authors as well. But tonight we're closing out this week with an old friend of EveryLibrary. So we're very pleased to have Jason Reynolds here with us. I'm going to bring Jason on now. Jason, thank you for taking the time to be with us again.
Of course, man. My pleasure. Anytime.
Oh, it's a real treat. I'm gonna read the intro. Okay, so we're going to be talking tonight about Jason's new work. It is called Soundtrack, and it is set in the early 2000s in New York City. It is a book about a group of kids who come together, who have a passion for music, and who do become an underground sensation. I want to talk with you, Jason, about your craft as a writer, your reflections on the culture of reading, the role of libraries and librarians in your life as well. For those of you who don't know Jason Reynolds, folks, he's the #1 New York Times bestselling author of more than 20 books for children and young adults, including All American Boys, the track series A Long Way Down. He's a 2024 MacArthur Fellow, a former National Ambassador for Young People's Literature, and an educator who's been inspiring readers of all ages to see themselves in their stories. Thanks for being on again with us. Last time I saw you was during Banned Books Week 2024. You were on with Lori Hall Sanderson and Steve Shabosky. You were the closing keynote for our Banned Books Week panel. That was before the election, Jason. I think a lot has changed. A lot has changed since then. How you doing?
I'm doing how most of us are doing, man. I'm all right. You know, I think in these moments, these are the moments where, as an artist, we sort of turn on. And also, as a person, I'm always searching for the light. I think there are a lot. I do have choices here. I can lay down or I can stand up. You know, and I choose to just stand up and search for the things that will keep me standing during this time.
Well, I get it. I think that the intersection of art and politics is not explored enough in this country anymore. There used to be a real artist commentary movement, and I'm thinking that we might have to come back to it.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. I mean, you know, there are some of us, I think, look, man, writing is always a revolutionary act, right? I think much like reading, by the way. So I think it's sort of baked into the work that I do, at least for me, it's sort of baked into it. I mean, even showing young people as human beings is a revolutionary act during this time, right? And during the course of this particular country, I think showing elders as human beings is a revolutionary act. Showing Black people, brown people, gay people, and all of the LGBTQIA plus, you know, neuroatypical folks, and you know, we can go on and on and on. I think to create space for those people to live, even if only on the pages, might create space for them to live in our world.
Well, when we talked back in October during Banned Books Week, one of the recurring themes was that book bans are not just about the First Amendment. They're campaigns of erasure. They're campaigns of eliminating people by eliminating their stories. And that affects both writers as well as readers in very profound ways. And we've been dealing with a tremendous amount of that happening in many states, a lot of localities, and even the federal government right now. It's not a situation that, as an American, I like or appreciate.
And I think for me, I feel the same way. You know, book banning has less to do about the art and more to do about the people who read or who are represented in the art, right? It's like you're not banning the book, you're banning the people. And what I think with the big misunderstanding, though, is that you're not only banning the people who the work is about. The moment you close the spigot for anyone to read about someone outside of themselves, you're also banning the growth of those people, which in turn is erasure of a version of them. Right. So the future version of little white kids, right, who need to know that the world is bigger than their sort of world and their space, their communities, families, homes, and spiritual spaces. if you cut that off, if you cut the opportunity for them to know there is more, then you cut their growth off, which then causes an erasure regardless. Their future selves have been wiped.
That is a chilling but true statement you just made. That's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Well, I want to congratulate you on releasing Soundtrack, your newest work. It is an audiobook original, which is, to me, a fascinating space. And I want to talk to you about not only the craft of writing it and the craft of putting it together, but also the story itself, because I think folks would enjoy it, not just for that empathetic, noble reason of reading and listening, but because it's a good story. I mean, what sparked it for you? It's teens busking in New York City subways.
Yeah.
And early 2000s, I mean, I was a young father at that point in the suburbs of Chicago. I don't know many of those people myself, but it was fun to meet them.
Yeah, you know what, man? I think the thing about this particular project is that it's an audio original, sort of.
Okay.
Sort of. This is actually a novel I wrote that just wasn't published. So it's written as a book. There is a manuscript in a cabinet downstairs in my house from where I'm sitting, right up under me right now. There is a manuscript in a blue cabinet that has been there for 10 years. And for whatever reason, my editors, they passed on it. Right, I turned it out. It was early in my career. It was 2015 when I wrote this thing. I'd written When I Was the Greatest. I'd written The Boy in the Black Suit. I think I had just turned in As Brave as You. And I was like, hey, here's this other thing I got. And I was so excited about it. And, you know, being a writer, not everything you make is going to go. Mm-hmm. Even if you think it's brilliant, right? Like in my mind at that age, I'm like, man, I am killing it, right? This book is great. I loved it so much. It felt like everything. My love letter to New York City. I was leaving New York City, and this was like my love letter to New York City. And you know, I think I left maybe a year and a half later, but I had decided that I was gonna start making my way out of New York City after a very, very, very long time. And I turned it in, didn't go, and it sat there, and it sat there, and it sat there, and it sat there, and I went on, right? Ghost came, Long Way Down, blah, 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 right? My life, my career went on and changed and grew, and you just kind of let things lie, you know? And then I got a call from PRH and from my buddy Dan over there, and for those of you who don't know who Dan Zitt is, you know, if there was ever a super producer of the audiobook, if there was ever a Rick Rubin of audiobooks, you know,
this a name check for you. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if that was a thing, this would be the guy. You know, he's won every Grammy. He's done he's just done so much in the space and to grow the space. Mm-hmm. Right. He's a huge proponent of why audiobooks continues to blossom in this way. And I know him. I've known him for a long time. We've done some work together earlier in my career. And so he gives me a call and he's like, look, man, we're trying to do some original stuff. You know, some IP work, you know, just something that hasn't been published, but that just can live in the audio space. Do you have anything, or would you make something, you know? And I'm like, well, I do have this one thing that's it's been lying around 10 years, right? It's been lying around. And it probably would be perfect for audio because it's a music story. Mm-hmm. But I won't do it like with any of my collaborations. I always make it clear that I don't want to do it if it's not going to be extraordinary, if it's not going to change something or at least feel new and fresh, right? Nothing is new and fresh, but at least feel new and fresh for this era, for this generation. Mm-hmm. He's like, hey man, let me see what it is. Send it to me. So I sent him the story, and that was it. He sort of was like, this is exactly what I've been looking for. He's a New York City guy. He's a music person. And they really just poured everything into this. And because he was, you know, he came to me and was like, I really want to go all the way. So if we're going to do it, I want to go all the way, which to me, that's, you know, no pun intended. That's music to my ears. That's how I always feel. Let's go. If anyone knows me when it comes to this work, I'm always trying to go all the way. If we're going to do a Long Way Down graphic novel, then Danica, we have to go all the way. If me and Raul are going to do Stunt Boy, Raul, we're going to have to go all the way, right? The brothers Pumphrey, when it came to the Langston book, I'm like, let's push ourselves. Me and Jason, when it came to Ain't Burn All the Bright, Brendan and I for All American Boys. If I'm going to collaborate, I really want to push it to the limit, to the best of our ability at any given time. And that's what Dan did. He put every bit of his muscle into this. He put every bit of his resource into this. And we got to make something that feels cinematic, that feels like that doesn't undermine the audiobook, but that does feel like more than an audiobook.
So you were collaborating with Justin Ellington. He's hell of a name, and Grammy Award winner, multiple award winner across different genres. He's done theater, he's done film, he's in the records business. I mean, the production team, did it reshape the original story, or did you bring that original story along? And then, like that creative process is always a little friction. It's always a lot of give and take.
Yeah, you know what? I told them, because I'm always careful about it, because it can become fraught, right? But the way I work, I always say the thing that I made, my part of the art has been made, right? My part of the art has been made. I wouldn't work with you if I didn't trust you. So I have to so I don't micromanage. I'm very much like, listen, you tell me what your interpretation of my part of the work is, but my part of the work is done. I've done my part. Now it's your turn to do your version, like whatever your dance steps are. They need to complement my dance steps, but they're definitely your dance steps. I've shown you my moves, right? Now I need you to fall in and figure out how you move within that space. And so, I told Dan, I gave him complete autonomy if he needed to change anything, that he could. If he needed to make it feel maybe something was outdated, or I got, whatever it might have been, he could make any changes he needed to make, but he didn't. For the most part, he left everything exactly as it is in that book. I told him what the music sounded like, right? I was, the kind of band they were. It's, jazz and funk and sort of a fusion jam band, like a picture of the Meters or Simone Day mixed with, Sun Ra and some of that old, like just an eclectic, maybe some funkadelic and I was curious about. I wanted it to sound like this hodgepodge of the Black music that I grew up on, right? This music that feels both hyper sophisticated and absolutely intuitive, right? That this is coming from the gut, and this is but requires an extraordinary amount of skill, like bebop, right?
That watch me for the changes, trust the other person who's playing. That jazz, that bebop, it's even in the straight theater and the ballet too. You gotta trust. You gotta have that environment.
Right, eyes on me, right? It's always a sort of like watch me for the changes, right? 1, 4, 5, right? We're like, follow where we're going. You know what I mean? And also, or James Brown, right? Listen, I'm gonna tell you everything we're doing if you just hear me. Like, listen to what I'm saying, right? Hit me 2 times, right? Can I hit it and quit it? Right, like it's just amazing to think. I love the way that musicians communicate. I grew up in a musical family. I grew up, I was an aspiring musician. I was not a very good musician, but I love to play music. I still love to fool around with music, and and though I am a writer, and though I love nothing more than being a writer, I do believe that music is the universal language.
And so that music scene in New York at that point, you said a moment ago that you were leaving New York. This is your homage to it. I mean, were you in the subways? Were you listening to kids like that?
Of course. I mean, in New York City, you spend your life in the subway, right? You spend your life on the ground, and I always found it incredible to think about all of the talent that we were just walking over every day. Like, growing up a hip hop kid, the word underground meant something very specific in the 80s and 90s. Underground meant authentic. It meant gritty. It meant true to the code of the culture, true to the rules of the musical form, right? If you were underground, it meant that you were holding on to a purity of sound in a way that technology was sort of moving us away from, right? Or money, capitalism was moving us away from, right? And so to think about that version of underground, and then to meet and see all of the kids who were physically, actually underground and upholding a particular sort of banner when it came to just like the rigor and the expressive nature of music, that always baffled me. I mean, like, anybody who lived in New York, the old man on the F line on the F train who sings the soul ballads. Right now, anybody who listens to this from New York, you know who I'm talking about. This man with a voice that is a booming, thunderous voice that has lived. There is so much life in that voice, so much pain in that voice that he can shut everything down. When that man sings, we all just wait. We sit, we stop talking, and we listen. Or the man who plays the trumpet downtown on the downtown trains. Everybody knows the guy who sets up and he just plays his trumpet. We all know him. He's probably in his 60s. We all know who he is.
Mm-hmm.
We've all seen him, right? And you're listening to people who there is a story there. There's a story in that horn. There's a story in that breath. There's a story in those notes, and they may never be known above ground.
Mm-hmm.
No one they will be walked over every day. Meanwhile, there's a microcosm taking place just beneath the pavement where so many of us have to live for moments at a time and get to experience it. It's like being in the bloodstream of New York City, being in the veins of it, right? We're beneath the skin. We're down into the muscle of it, down into the veins of it.
Mm-hmm.
And down there, that's where the soundtrack exists.
Mm-hmm. You know, I grew up and live in the Chicagoland area. I took the subway and the train for a long time in and out of the city. I work from home now, but it's nothing like the New York City experience. Nothing. I mean, Chicago's got a couple guys down there doing something sometimes when they're not getting, rushed out. New York City is New York City.
Yeah. You can make a living down there.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the city even has they have different initiatives where they'll put up a banner for you so you can play.
See, that's good. My wife and I, ever since COVID, and things wrapped up with that and you can start going back out again, we made a firm commitment to go out and listen to live music as often as we could. At one point we weren't sure where to go next. We didn't know the bands. We put all the venues that we like in a hat. And we just pick them out and be like, okay, we're going there on Friday, but we don't run into it in other places. You don't run into live music spontaneously happening like that. It's a different world there. It's
a different world, man. And whereas in New York, you step off the train and you can hear it, or you step on the train and you can hear it on the train, in the car.
Yeah.
There used to be a man when I first moved to New York. There used to be a man in the A train and the C train. Old man played the guitar. He sang Bob Marley songs, but his voice was completely wrecked. His voice was like how Miles's voice, his windpipe and his vocal cords were just wrecked, and so his voice sounded like a raspy whisper. And he sang these Bob Marley songs, and we loved him.
I can imagine.
And we loved them. There's something to it.
Mm-hmm. So with soundtrack, it's a full cast recording. It's an original score. I mean, the opportunity to see you were not writing a radio play here, and you were not originally writing an audiobook either.
No.
So walking that what was intended to be scanned visually and in your head, into that kind of a thing. How is that going to affect your craft? Do you think moving forward?
It won't. You know why? Because I think what it actually did was it affirmed and confirmed that the way I hear language is musical. Like my intention is always to be musical. It always has been. I mean, anyone who's read my work, well,
it's very poetic.
It's very poetic. There's always a meter there. I can't divorce myself from the meter, right? It's metronomic intentionally, right? And this was an interesting experiment because to give over a straight ahead novel and to see how they interpreted it, because it felt so musical to them, it means that I did what I set out to do, And so for me, it's more like stick to what you like, trust your gut, trust your intuition, stick to that thing that is yours, and trust that it's working.
I don't think that my wife can play this one on double speed either. She's going
to. John, I'm glad you said this because I actually, when you said that, I actually have been asking people to not.
Yeah.
I've been asking people. I know why people play it on double speed. I know that there is something about completing a book and moving through those pages and moving through that story. I actually would like this to be experienced slowly. I want us to just kind of live in this world, and I want us to hear the music without distorting it, hear the voices, hear the city, and kind of just give ourselves a week to live with this one.
I think it's 6.5 hours well spent.
Exactly. It's a little bit at a time. You can get
Yeah,
that done in no time, you know.
absolutely. So, looking at this experience with soundtrack, is there something else from your backlist that you want to go in and take a bite out of it the same way?
Maybe, you know, if I had to pick something. So the honest answer is no.
Cool.
But if I had to pick something, I would definitely pick Look Both Ways.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's basically a 10-track album,
Okay.
you know. So
Yeah.
and I think it would be the equivalent of like a mixtape,
Mm-hmm.
where every track is a different track, every song is a different song, and it feels completely different. But there is a theme, you know. It's like Live 8, you know what I mean? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
like we're talking about this particular thing, but you know, it's all these different acts sort of doing their version or you know, their contribution to this thing. So that would be
Mm-hmm.
super cool. But honestly, I'd much rather just write something original for the audio space.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you've been up to for your MacArthur Fellowship, but congratulations on that. I mean, that's one of those things that everyone is a little jealous of you for, you know.
Yeah. I
But
hope not.
no, seriously, I mean, that's a hell of a recognition, you know. How's that fellowship time been for you as a writer or as a mentor, you know, for other writers?
It's good. You know, the MacArthur for me, man, and you know, I'm always careful when I talk about it because it means something different for everybody, you know.
Mhm.
Um, what I want it to mean for me is just more of us being considered. I think I'm grateful for the recognition. I think it's it is rare air, right? I recognize that. And I would never sort of poo-poo that I think it's disingenuous to be like,
No,
you
no,
know,
no.
it's
I'm not throwing any shade on it at all by asking. I'm sincerely interested.
no. And I'm not throwing any shit. I'm prefacing my answer because I think sometimes it's so easy for people to be like, oh, you know, like, oh, yeah, you know, I just focus on the work. It's no big, and it's like, that's not, you know, I think that's disingenuous, right? It is a big deal. I'm very grateful, and honestly, it's an honor to be considered. And I've met some of the people in my cohort, and it's overwhelming and humbling to be in space with some of these people. That being said, much like I felt with the ambassadorship,
Hmm.
uh, I I look at these things not as awards. I see them as responsibilities.
Hmm.
And this particular one to me just feels like I will always kind of carry a bit of a chip on my shoulder as far as the way that I feel about the treatment of those of us who write for kids.
Hmm.
I think there's look, I live in a very specific space where I've been able to kind of navigate all the different pockets and worlds of the literary community, right? And I'm grateful for that. But that's not the experience of all of my friends, right? Who get siloed and sort of relegated because they chose to write for kids. Writing for kids is not a relegation, right? It's an honor because we're the ones, like I said, and I said this at the MacArthur retreat. If we don't do our jobs, none of y'all are here. There's no engineers. There's
No,
no scientists and
no.
all of you geniuses who are changing the world in a very tangible way. Don't do so if we can't figure out how to get you reading as a young person,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
So your time as a national ambassador for young people, this MacArthur Fellowship. I mean, you're in touch not just with readers, but people who think about reading,
Mhm.
not just educators, but people who think about how education is done and how access is provided. I mean, how do we like? This is not an easy time for reading right now, with
No.
all the censorship going on, we've already discussed, but also all the distractions. Also, this kind of de-emphasis of reading and into the sciences only. I mean, how do we encourage families and encourage kids if their families aren't going to step up?
Yeah, John, honestly, man, I don't know. I'm trying. I'm working. I'm trying. I've been being a little more intentional about making it clear that I don't have the answer to this question.
That's
Uh,
fair.
because not because I don't want to. I want to, but I really don't know. I'm trying, and I'm trying to figure it out. And I know all of us are, and we're fighting this fight. I'm like, it's weird to know that in a world where people don't want to read, that I'm a person making books,
Hmm.
right? So, like,
Hmm.
I am the antithesis of the time. That being said, I don't know if I've given up hope that people don't want to read, just because I know that people are reading my books. I know my books are being read, And
Mhm.
because I know my books are being read, all I can think about is trying to figure out what about these books are working. Why is it working? How do I make sure that I continue to sort of, while I have the microphone, let me make sure that I'm doing the things I need to do. Let me make sure I'm shining the light on the people around me whose work deserves to be read or needs to be read for the fortification of our young people. And I use needs in quotation, obviously. I think that it can get tricky, but how do I fight back against the politics of it all?
Mhm.
How do I fight or push the idea that I believe that other than the physical health of the globe itself, literacy is the number one issue on the planet,
Mhm.
right? How do
Mhm.
I even allow myself
Mhm.
to think bigger than America,
Yeah.
right? And as a global literary citizen, and as a literate man with the power to proliferate literacy, how do I also push the narrative, which I do believe, by the way, that the second most important issue on earth is literacy? Because it's not just America. The literacy numbers are dropping all over the world.
Mhm.
Everybody is suffering for the same reasons, by the way: politics, technology, so forth and so on, right? It's
Mhm.
all
Mhm.
happening for the same reasons. There's a globalization that has affected business, right? And there's a globalization that has affected culture. And the parts of globalization that affected culture has affected the literacy rates all over the world. And if we can't figure out how to bend this back in some way, shape, or form, it won't matter that we have scientists. First of all, it won't matter that we have scientists because we won't have them in 20 years.
Mhm.
We will
Mhm.
run out because
Mhm.
they won't be able to read.
Mhm.
It won't matter that we have engineers now. We won't have engineers in 20 years because they won't be able, because not only will they not be able to read, they won't be able to think critically, because reading and writing and language is what helps us sort of critically unknot the knots in our minds and in our societies.
Mhm.
Right. So for me, this is much bigger than just like, why aren't they reading books? To me, this is like, we're looking at a global epidemic, right? A pandemic, a different kind of pandemic. And I'm trying to figure out, what do we do about that, let alone what's happening in my backyard.
The the literacy as gateway to everything is not an exaggeration. It's
No.
literacy in economic development. It's in
Yes.
attainment. It's literacy in health. It's literacy.
Incarceration,
Yes, absolutely,
brother.
absolutely.
It's everywhere. I'm talking, it is it is the cornerstone. I mean, look, we can strip it from our everyday lives and just look at it from an anthropological perspective,
Hmm.
right? They say language is the cornerstone of culture.
Hmm.
If you lose
Hmm.
it, you lose culture. If you change it, you change culture. If you engage with it, you engage with culture. If you grow it, you grow culture. Right? This is just an anthropological sort of the way that they think about it, right? So
Hmm.
for us to be in a space in which it is stifled means that there are parts of our culture that are stifled too. The parts of our, and not just the parts of our culture as they exist today, but the parts of our culture as they will exist tomorrow. So then we ask ourselves, well, how do we get a Donald Trump in office? I
Hmm.
can tell you, right? I'm sure that if we all sat back and started to connect the dots about what is lacking in our cultural space, primarily something like literacy,
Hmm.
as it pertains to language, because there are many literacies, but literacy as it pertains to reading and writing,
Hmm.
it's a lot easier to sort of see the pathway to how something like this might happen.
Oh, absolutely. No, I'm with you on that. And in fact, I want to check in with you about your thoughts on the situation with the Library of Congress right now. The National Ambassador for Young People's Literature was a component of the Library of Congress. Dr. Carla Hayden, who was the immediate past Librarian of Congress, is only the immediate past Librarian of Congress because President Trump decided to fire her the other day. I mean, these are crazy times we're living in, where not only will the president reach into something that is of Congress, thinking he can push it around, and I'm concerned about the constitutional issues here, but also the idea that this very able, very competent, very empathetic librarian who was heading up the National Library was so easily dismissible by the
Mm.
president.
Yeah, I think I think that there are so many moments in my professional life, and as I've gotten older, where I've worked to complicate my own arguments because I think it's healthy for me. This one actually doesn't feel as complicated. And I've tried, John, right? But you can't tell me that this woman is a person who is perpetuating falsities when it comes to American history. You can't tell me. Mind you, I want to be clear here. I worked intimately with Dr. Hayden as the ambassador, and I had tons of things that I wanted to say that office would not allow for me to say because they are bipartisan. Which I respected. They're America's library. She was America's librarian, and she was very clear about what could not be said, what I could not, like that I had to actually walk a line that was a fair line. So I can't. So if I know, so I know that intimately, which means that when a person says something like she's perpetuating a falsity when it comes to American history, it's been one of the rare moments over the course of the last 5 years where I can't complicate the argument. I have to call it what it is and say, seems to me that this is racist. Right? Like now, I've tried very hard to be like, maybe I'm missing something. But I've run down, I'm like, I was there. I was in the office. I was the one like, really, Dr. Hayden, I can't. And she's like, that's not what we're doing. That's not your job. You're the ambassador for the country.
For the country, yes, that's what ambassadors do. Yeah, that's right.
That's your job. So we're gonna have to, all the red tape that I had to go through to make any decision about my ambassadorship, right? Making it very difficult to do the job, but understanding what was on the line for her and making sure that she understood, like, look, this is how this works. This is a federal position. I can assure you, John, that this woman, not only did she have a heart for this work, she also understood what the position called for. And she could put her feelings and emotions and opinions to the side to be the librarian of a country, which means to fire her. And it's all rooted around their version of DEI, which is just dog whistling for race. It's just race, like it's just a racial decision. And for that, I think it's unforgivable. Now, there's another part of me, and this is a controversial take, but there's another part of me, though I wish that this never would have happened. There's another part of me. It's like Dr. Hayden had 1 year to go. And I hope she's on vacation. I hope she's getting her rest. I hope her TV is off. I hope she's on the beach somewhere enjoying this part of her life. We'll fight that fight.
Yeah, I mean I'm going to say I doubt that, knowing her a little bit like I do, but you know her pretty well.
But I want that for her. So do I.
I understand that. Yeah, no, she's done. She's shown up.
Job well done, Dr. Hayden.
That's right.
How much? I mean, like we've asked for everything, and she's delivered on everything. And I don't. And been a face-forward librarian, by the way. She's rebranded, arguably, what it might even be to be a librarian. And so it's the human part of me is like, take a rest. Yeah.
She's earned it. Absolutely. We've had tens of thousands of people take action through some of the petitions that we have up online. We're trying to talk to Congress directly about this one because it can't get lost. It can't get lost because of her, and it can't get lost because of the Congress part either. We're in a position here where I'm very nervous about the structure of our government, and I'm very nervous about the kind of society that we want to live in. And having a conversation with Congress about their library is maybe the first time in an awfully long time that they've had to have such a big conversation about libraries to begin with. And if the one thing that will come out of this for her, she has her dignity intact. I'm not suggesting otherwise. But the one thing that may come out of this is a chance to really push at our elected officials in a new way, in a strident way about what librarianship means and what these institutions are supposed to be doing.
I agree, man. I back this wholeheartedly. It's weird how because it does present an opportunity, right? It does present an opportunity. I mean, people were up in arms at the firing of this person. This is somebody. I mean, my mother was livid. She couldn't believe it because Dr. Hayden meant so much to so many of us, and does mean so much to so many of us, not just because, and I think this is because you're right. I think this is the thing, right? There's another conversation that can be had about the value and the power of librarians, about what it really meant to know that that person was there doing that particular job and what that job actually was. But people don't even understand all of the archival works.
Oh yeah,
Like,
it's
I mean,
so
like,
deep.
right,
Yeah.
while she's being accused of misrepresenting a country, she's given her life to preserving it
Mm-hmm.
and to making it accessible for all. You could just walk in there and ask to see something that 50 years ago no one would have been able to see.
Right. I mean, there's that refrain, whose history, our history, and whose library? It's our library.
Our library.
Mm-hmm.
I never felt comfortable before Dr. Hayden got in office. I never stepped foot in the library, in that library.
Yeah.
Didn't know I could. Didn't know. Mind you, I live here. I live 3/4 of a mile from. You can walk straight up my street and get to the Library of Congress. You run right into it.
Is that right?
Yes. And never went into it. Never been inside. Couldn't believe they had library card. I could get a library card. Well, until she got that job. Until she got that job.
Yeah, I was in D.C. a couple of weeks ago for some meetings, the congressional meetings around the Institute of Museum and Library Services. This is before everything happened with the Library of Congress. And there was a line out the door. Just a line out the door, like there was across the street to get in the Capitol, like there was down the way to get the National Archives, like the way over the Smithsonian.
Yeah.
You go by those lines all the time. I've been in those lines.
Yeah.
And the fact that people are still lining up gives me some hope too.
Man, let me tell you, the first time I remember Dr. Hayden, when she first got the gig, the first time at the National Book Festival, and I bump into her, you would have thought Toni Morrison was there. You would have thought Stephen King had stepped in the room. The crowd of people, you would have thought it was Beyonce.
Yeah.
People gathered around just to shake her hand, just to get a hug and a picture. This is the librarian. And people are like, and it was the most incredible experience to see her be treated with such regard.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you sharing all this with me today. It's a real pleasure to be able to have a conversation with you like this, and to hear about your new work, of course, but also your craft and the way that you're thinking about it. And you are in a particular interesting space because folks know your name. You're a brand name out there for young people's literature.
Yeah.
You are a creative individual. And the fact that you're still trying to scratch your head a little bit around all this makes me a little bit, not happy at all, but a little comforted by the fact that we got to figure this all out together.
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, look, man, I'm glad that the work that y'all do, it's good to know that you all are scratching your heads too. I think at some point we'll all get there, but it's good to know that we're all sort of on one accord trying to sort out whatever this is at this moment. And I'm a phone call away, man. I'm always around to get with you and work with you and do whatever I can to be of any help.
Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you. And I know folks around there appreciate your leadership on the library issues. So, okay, I got one follow-up question that I meant to ask you earlier, and this is a sincere question because I want to come back around to Soundtrack, your new original audio. It's Penguin Random House. It's available now in bookstore or online for download, as well as in libraries for download. Do you listen to audiobooks? Do you read audiobooks yourself, or is this an area that you're is that part of your reading?
Yeah, it is. It is usually at night. It's that's my nighttime reading.
Is that right?
Yeah, I put on an audiobook for 10 minutes and that's how I go to sleep.
Okay.
I listen and then eventually I doze off, and then the next day I back it up 3 or 4 minutes and listen. That's sort of, what it is. I think there's something about the I like the idea that there's a story sort of seeping into my subconscious.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Jason, you've been very kind. I need to close with the pun that comes from being the host. I get to say, I can't wait to hear what you're going to write next.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, Jason. All right, folks, it's been Audiobook Week 2025. The entire archive of all the other ones we've done this week is available on Facebook, EveryLibrary Facebook, EveryLibrary YouTube, and this one will be ready for on-demand viewing in about 30 seconds. It's great fun to have been with you. I'm going to put up the card and talk to you in the green room. Good night, everybody.